Some hotel rooms are locked for maintenance. Some are closed for privacy. But there are rooms sealed for another reason entirely. This story comes from an old hotel in Thailand, one that officially has no 7th floor. No room 724. And no record of anything unusual ever happening at 2:17 a.m. Yet former staff, night workers, and long-term guests all tell the same story. They say if you work late enough, if you stay long enough, you may hear knocking from inside the walls. And if you ever see a door marked "Do Not Open," there is a reason it is still closed. Chapter 1. The Scratched Brass Plaque. Sawasdi Orchid Hotel stood quietly beside an old road near the Chao Phraya River, half hidden behind rows of neglected tamarind trees. From the outside, it looked like hundreds of other aging hotels scattered across Bangkok, 3 floors. Pale yellow paint faded by years of sun and monsoon rain. Windows that reflected nothing more than passing headlights and drifting dust. There was nothing remarkable about the building. Nothing, at least, at first glance. Guests often forgot its name the moment they checked out. Taxi drivers hesitated before recognizing it. Even locals rarely mentioned it, as if the hotel existed slightly out of focus, lingering on the edge of memory rather than fully inside it. Yet anyone who stayed long enough eventually noticed the same thing. At the far end of the 7th floor corridor, past the last working light fixture, beyond the faint smell of mold and old carpet, stood a single wooden door darker than the rest. Its surface was scarred with long scratches, as though someone had once tried to claw their way out from the inside. Mounted at eye level was a small brass plaque. The metal had dulled over time, its edges worn thin, the surface etched with countless marks that no amount of polishing could remove. When the hallway lights flickered, the plaque reflected a sickly, uneven glow. The words engraved into it were simple, precise, and deeply unsettling. Room 724. Do not open. No other room in the hotel bore such a warning. There was no explanation in the lobby, no mention in the guest directory, no number 724 on the emergency maps posted by the elevators. In fact, according to the official floor plan, the 7th floor only had 20 rooms. Room 724 should not have existed at all. Housekeeping never cleaned near that door. Maintenance staff pretended not to see it. Even veteran employees who had worked at Sawasdi Orchid for decades avoided looking in its direction, lowering their voices whenever conversations drifted too close to the end of the corridor. New guests sometimes asked about it. They were always told the same thing. It's locked for renovation. But no tools were ever brought up. No workers ever entered. And at night, when the hotel fell silent and the city's noise thinned into a distant hum, the air around room 724 grew strangely heavy, as if the hallway itself was holding its breath. Some nights, the light above the door turned on by itself. And sometimes, at exactly 2:17 a.m., faint shadows appeared beneath the doorframe, moving slowly, deliberately, despite the fact that no one was supposed to be inside. Chapter 2. The First Night Shift. Anand never planned to work the night shift. Dropping out of university had not been part of his life plan either. But plans dissolved quickly once money became a problem. The job at Sawasdi Orchid paid just enough. And more importantly, it came with one rule that sounded almost comforting at the time. Night shifts are quiet. On his first night, Anand arrived at the front desk shortly before 11. The lobby lights were dimmed to half their usual brightness, casting long shadows across the tiled floor. The air smelled faintly of jasmine air freshener mixed with something older, dust, damp fabric, and time. The senior receptionist handed him the logbook, gave him a tired smile, and left without another word. By midnight, the hotel was silent. No phones rang. No doors opened. Even the elevator seemed reluctant to move. Its metallic hum slow and strained whenever Anand tested it. He tried to distract himself by flipping through the guest registry. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, names and dates blending together into a dull rhythm, until he noticed something strange. Every night shift entry, without exception, ended abruptly. No signatures. No closing notes. Just empty space after 2:30 a.m. At exactly 2:17 a.m., The lobby lights flickered. Anon looked up in time to see the elevator display change on its own. 7. His stomach tightened. There was no button for the 7th floor inside the elevator. He had checked earlier, twice. The hotel officially only had 6 floors. Yet the display glowed steadily, as if responding to a command no human hand had given. The elevator doors remained closed. Still, Anon heard something. A soft sound, like bare feet stepping onto carpet. Then silence. Moments later, the display returned to normal. The lights stabilized. The air felt lighter again, as though something unseen had passed through and moved on. Anon told himself it was a malfunction. Old buildings had old wiring. Old machines behaved strangely at night. But when he wrote the incident into the logbook, his pen hesitated. His hand trembled as he realized he wasn't writing alone. Beneath his fresh ink, faint letters slowly appeared, pressed deep into the paper, as if written long ago and only now resurfacing. She arrived on time. Anon closed the book. From somewhere far above, deep within the hotel's bones, a door creaked open.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The Woman Without a Name. The woman appeared just after 2 in the morning. There was no sound to announce her arrival, no chime from the automatic doors. No footsteps on the marble floor. One moment the lobby was empty, and the next, she was standing in front of the reception desk as if she had always been there. Anon looked up and felt his breath catch. She was dressed in a long white silk dress, old-fashioned in design, the fabric hanging loosely from her thin frame. Her hair was black, long, and slightly damp, clinging to her cheeks and neck as though she had just stepped out of rain that did not exist. She was barefoot. The soles of her feet were darkened, stained as if by ash or soot. The lights above flickered once. "Good evening," Anon said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "May I help you?" The woman lifted her head slowly, but not enough for him to see her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was soft, too soft for the empty lobby. "My room," she said. "It hasn't been opened yet." Anon frowned. "Could you tell me your room number?" "Ma'am?" She shook her head. "They don't allow me to say it." A chill crawled up Anon's spine. He glanced at the clock behind the desk. 2:17 a.m. "Your name, then?" he tried again. For a moment, the woman was silent. Her fingers tightened around the strap of a small, old leather bag hanging at her side. When she finally spoke, her answer made no sense. "I don't have one anymore." Anon swallowed. He opened the guest registry, scanning the latest check-ins. No one matched her description. No arrivals were scheduled for that hour. "I'm sorry," he said carefully, "but I don't see your booking here." The woman's head tilted slightly. An unnatural angle, like a puppet guided by unfamiliar strings. "I always arrive at the same time," she whispered. "You wrote it down." Anon's heart pounded. Slowly, he flipped back through the logbook until he reached the previous night shift entries. The same pattern repeated, empty spaces after 2:30 a.m. Except for one page, pressed faintly into the paper, nearly invisible unless the light hit it just right, were words that had not been written in fresh ink. Room 724. Check-in, 2:17. No name. No signature. The woman leaned closer to the counter. Anon caught a faint smell of smoke, sharp and bitter, clinging to her clothes. "May I have the key now?" she asked. Before Anon could answer, the elevator behind her chimed softly. The display lit up. 7. The woman turned toward it, her dress brushing the floor without making a sound. "Please," she said over her shoulder. "Don't forget me again." The elevator doors slid open. And then, impossibly, closed, empty. The woman was gone. But the smell of smoke lingered. And on the counter, where she had been standing, lay a thin trail of black ash shaped unmistakably like bare footprints. Chapter 4. The Blank Guestbook. The smell of smoke lingered in the lobby long after the woman disappeared. Anon scrubbed the counter twice, then a third time, but the faint bitterness remained, clinging to the air as if it had seeped into the walls themselves. The black footprints vanished quickly, dissolving into nothing the moment he touched them, leaving no stain, no proof that they had ever been there at all. By dawn, Anon had convinced himself that exhaustion had played tricks on his mind. That illusion shattered the following night. During a lull in activity, he returned to the guest registry. The book was heavier than it should have been, its leather cover cracked and stiff with age. Most of the pages were filled neatly, line after line of names, dates, and room numbers, until he reached the middle. There, several pages were stuck together. Not simply pressed flat by humidity, but sealed, edges hardened with something yellowed and brittle, like old glue or dried resin. When Anon pried them apart, the paper tore slightly, releasing a faint, sour smell. The pages beneath were almost completely blank. No names, no dates, no room numbers, just empty space. At first, he thought the ink had faded with time, but as he tilted the pages under the desk lamp, he noticed shallow indentations in the paper, rows and columns where words had once been written, then deliberately erased, scraped away, as if someone had taken great care to remove not just the ink, but the memory of what had been recorded. At the very bottom of one page, barely visible, was a single entry that had resisted erasure. 724. Nothing else. Anon's fingers trembled as he traced the number. The paper felt warmer there, faintly pulsing, like skin over a hidden vein. A sound came from behind him. The elevator. It hadn't chimed, the doors hadn't opened, yet the display glowed softly, reflecting in the polished lobby floor. 7. Anon snapped the guestbook shut. His reflection in the mirrored wall behind the desk looked wrong. His face was pale, eyes sunken, but that wasn't what made his breath hitch. For just a moment, there was someone standing behind him. A woman in white. Her outline was faint, incomplete, as if she were struggling to remain visible. Where her face should have been, there was only darkness, swallowing the light around it. Anon spun around. The lobby was empty. But the guestbook. When he opened it again, a new line had appeared on the previously blank page. Fresh ink, still wet. Check-in, 217. No name. And beneath it, written in a smaller, unsteady hand, a sentence that made his stomach twist. If no one remembers us, we stay. The lights flickered violently. From somewhere above, far above, the sound of something heavy being dragged across a floor echoed once, then stopped. Anon realized, with cold certainty, that room 724 was not simply closed. It was full.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. Knocking from inside the walls. The knocking began the following night. At first, Anon thought it was part of the building, old pipes, shifting walls, the quiet complaints of a structure that had stood too long without care. Sawasdi Orchid was full of such noises. He had already learned to ignore the groans of the elevator cables and the soft ticking hidden behind the ceiling. But this sound was different. It came precisely at 2:17 a.m. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Evenly spaced. Knock, knock, knock. They echoed faintly through the lobby, vibrating the surface of the reception desk beneath Anon's palms. The sound did not come from any door. It came from the wall behind the elevator, the solid concrete section that housed nothing but a narrow service shaft. Anon held his breath. Silence followed. Then, after several seconds, the knocks came again. 3 more. This time closer. He stood, pressing his ear against the wall. The sound was muffled but unmistakable, something striking from the other side. Not metal, not wood. Flesh against stone. Anon staggered back. The rational part of his mind searched desperately for explanations. A trapped animal. A loose panel. A broken mechanism. But each theory collapsed under the weight of one terrifying detail. The knocks were not random. They were answering him. When Anon stepped away, the sound stopped. When he leaned closer again, it resumed, 3 careful knocks, as if whoever, or whatever, was on the other side knew exactly where he stood. His radio crackled suddenly, sharp and loud in the empty lobby. Static. Then a voice. It was low, distorted, stretched thin by interference, but it was speaking Thai. Open it. Anon nearly dropped the device. Who is this? He demanded. his voice shaking despite his effort to control it. The radio hissed. "No door," the voice replied. "Only walls." The knocking resumed. Faster now. Urgent. Knock knock knock. A thin crack appeared along the wall near the elevator frame. Dust drifted down, coating the floor in a fine gray layer. From the crack seeped a familiar smell: burnt fabric. Smoke. Something charred beyond recognition. Anand backed away until his shoulders hit the opposite wall. The elevator display flickered. 7. The knocking stopped instantly. The crack sealed itself, leaving no mark behind. The smell faded. The radio went dead. In the sudden quiet, Anand realized his heart was pounding so hard it hurt. He glanced at the clock. 2:18 a.m. On the reception desk, the guestbook lay open, though he was certain he had closed it. A new sentence had been added beneath the last entry. "We are closer than the door." Anand understood then. Room 724 was not waiting to be opened. It was already reaching out. Chapter 6. The staff WHO never stay long. By the end of his second week, Anand realized something was wrong with the staff roster. It wasn't written anywhere. No memo. No warning from management. It was something you noticed only after paying attention, after listening carefully to what wasn't being said. The night shift was always short-handed. When Anand asked about previous receptionists, the daytime staff gave vague answers. Some shrugged, others laughed uncomfortably. "They quit," one woman said. "Didn't suit them," another replied. "Too sensitive," someone joked. But no one ever said how long they had lasted. One night, unable to sleep even during his break, Anand found the old security guard smoking alone near the back entrance. Somchai had worked at Sawasdi Orchid longer than anyone else, long enough. Anand suspected, to know better than to ask questions. Still, he asked, "How many people worked the night shift before me?" Somchai exhaled slowly, watching the smoke drift upward. "Depends," he said. "How far back do you want to count?" Anand frowned. "What do you mean?" Somchai crushed his cigarette under his boot. "Most don't stay longer than 6 months. Some leave sooner." "And the ones who don't?" Anand asked. Somchai finally looked at him. His eyes were tired, afraid. "They get invited upstairs." Anand felt his throat tighten. "Invited where?" Somchai hesitated, then lowered his voice. "The floor that isn't on the map." The words sent a chill through Anand's spine. "Room 724? He whispered. Somchai's jaw clenched. He glanced toward the elevator, as if expecting it to hear them. "That room doesn't belong to the hotel anymore," he said. "It belongs to what was left unfinished." Somchai explained that years ago, before Anand was even born, the hotel had been different. New owners, new ambitions, people who believed that certain doors, if opened correctly, could bring wealth, protection, luck that lasted generations. "They chose a guest," Somchai said quietly, "someone no one would miss. A foreign woman, alone, no family nearby." The ritual failed. The fire that followed was blamed on faulty wiring. Compensation was paid, records were altered, the room was sealed. "But sealing isn't the same as closing," Somchai said, "especially when someone is still inside." Anand's voice shook. "Then why is the room still here?" Somchai met his gaze. "Because she remembers us," he said, "and now, you remember her." From the lobby, the elevator chimed softly. They both froze. 7. Somchai stepped back. "If you hear knocking," he said quickly, "don't answer. If you see her." The elevator doors slid open. "Empty." Somchai turned away. "And whatever you do," he added, his voice barely audible, "don't let them write your name." Anand returned to the desk alone. At 2:17 a.m., the guestbook opened by itself. A new line appeared. Not faint, not hidden. Clear and deliberate. Anand. Pending check-in. The knocking began again.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. The camera that lost its frames. Anand had always trusted cameras more than people. Machines, at least, recorded what was there. They didn't imagine things. They didn't dream. They didn't lie to protect themselves from fear. That belief began to rot the night he reviewed the footage from the 7th floor corridor. The security room was a narrow space behind the lobby, lit by a single fluorescent bulb that hummed softly overhead. 4 monitors lined the wall, each displaying a different section of the hotel. Most nights, the feeds were uneventful, empty hallways, closed doors, stillness broken only by the occasional flicker of bad wiring. At 1:58 a.m., everything looked normal. At 2 a.m., the 7th floor camera glitched. Static crawled across the screen like insects under glass. The image warped, stretched, then snapped back into focus, but the hallway no longer looked the same. It was longer. The walls seemed narrower, pressing inward. The carpet was darker, stained unevenly, as if it had absorbed something that never fully dried. The light fixtures flickered, each pulse slightly out of sync with the others. Anand leaned closer to the screen. At 2:16 a.m., the feed froze. The timestamp continued to run, but the image did not move. Then, slowly, the door at the end of the corridor, room 724, began to open. Anand's breath caught. The door did not swing outward. It folded inward, bending at an impossible angle, as if the space behind it was pulling it apart. What lay beyond was not darkness, but light, harsh, white, and wrong, flooding the hallway with sharp contrast. Something moved inside the room. At first, Anand thought it was smoke. Then he realized it was a woman. She stood just inside the doorway, her body unnaturally still. Her dress was burned and torn, clinging to her frame. One arm hung at an angle that suggested it had once been broken and never healed correctly. She lifted her head. The camera feed distorted violently. Where her face should have been, there was nothing but a blurred void, as if the lens itself refused to resolve her features. At 2:17 a.m., the woman stepped forward. The moment her bare foot crossed the threshold, the entire 7th floor feed went black. Not static. Not interference. Black. The other cameras continued recording normally. Anand rewound the footage. The system refused. The file didn't exist. According to the logs, the camera had been offline for exactly 17 seconds. When the feed returned, the hallway was empty again. The door to room 724 was closed. The corridor looked normal, shorter, cleaner, almost harmless. Anand sat back, shaking. Behind him, reflected faintly in the dark screen of another monitor, stood a woman in white. He turned. No one was there. But on the 7th floor monitor, written faintly across the image, burned into the pixels themselves, were words that no camera should have been able to record. "You saw me." The clock on the wall ticked forward. 2:18 a.m. Anand understood then. The room did not want witnesses. It wanted recognition. And the cameras were starting to remember. Chapter 8. The Fire of 1998. The year 1998 was mentioned nowhere in the hotel. Not on the website. Not in the promotional brochures. Not in the framed newspaper clippings hung near the lobby restrooms, all of which carefully skipped from 1996 to 2001 as if the missing years had never existed. Anand found it by accident. While searching the storage room for extra printer paper, he uncovered a rusted filing cabinet shoved behind broken furniture and unused decorations. Its drawers protested loudly when he forced them open, releasing a cloud of dust thick enough to sting his eyes. Inside were old incident reports, handwritten logs, and insurance documents browned with age. Most were mundane, until he saw the word fire. The report was dated August 17, 1998. Time of incident, 2:17 a.m. Location: room 724. Anand's pulse quickened. According to the official statement, the fire was caused by faulty electrical wiring. A single fatality, a foreign female guest traveling alone. No witnesses, no foul play suspected. Case closed. But attached to the report was a second document, thinner and deliberately folded, marked confidential in faded red ink. This one told a different story. The fire had not started in the walls or ceiling. It had begun on the floor, at the center of the room, around a circular pattern scorched deep into the wood. Candle wax had been found melted into the cracks. Symbols unfamiliar to the investigating officers had been drawn in ash and blood. The woman had not been asleep. She had been restrained. Anand felt sick as he read further. The report mentioned chanting heard by neighboring guests shortly before the fire alarm went off. Voices speaking an archaic dialect of Thai no longer used outside certain remote temples. By the time authorities arrived, the chanting had stopped. Only the fire remained. And the body. The final paragraph was crossed out, overwritten with black ink so thick it tore the paper. Anand held the page up to the light. Beneath the ink, faint impressions remained. Ritual incomplete. Gate unstable. Subject remained. A cold realization settled over him. The woman had not been a guest. She had been an offering. The hotel's owners at the time were never charged. The case was quietly settled. Ownership changed hands within a year. Renovations were announced, then quietly cancelled. Room 724 was sealed. But sealed was not erased. Anand closed the file with shaking hands. From the hallway outside the storage room came the sound of soft footsteps, bare feet on tile. Moving slowly, patiently. A familiar voice whispered through the door. "I burned so you could open it." The clock on Anand's phone lit up. 2:17 a.m. The fire, he realized, had never truly gone out. It was waiting.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. The Shared Dream. Anand stopped sleeping properly after the files from 1998. At first, it was only exhaustion, his body refusing rest, his mind replaying burned words and half-erased truths. But soon, sleep found him anyway, dragging him under when he least expected it. And every time it did, the dream was the same. He stood in the 7th-floor corridor. The hallway was longer than it should have been, stretching far beyond the limits of the building. The walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. The carpet beneath his feet was warm, too warm, softened by something that felt disturbingly organic. At the end of the corridor waited room 724. The brass plaque was no longer scratched. It gleamed, polished to a mirror shine, reflecting Anand's face back at him. But the reflection lagged behind his movements, smiling when he did not. He reached for the door. A voice spoke from behind it. Not loud. Not threatening. Patient. "You promised." Anand woke up screaming. His sheets were damp with sweat. The smell of smoke clung to the air, thick enough to sting his throat. He sat up, heart pounding, and froze. On his hands were marks. Dark smudges across his palms and fingers, as if he had pressed them against charred wood. The skin felt tight, tender, as though lightly burned. When he rubbed at the marks, they did not fade. They sank deeper. Night after night, the dream returned. Each time, the corridor grew longer. Each time, the door stood closer. And always, the voice waited. Sometimes it sounded like the woman in white. Sometimes it sounded like Anand himself. On the 5th night, he dreamed of the room opening. Inside was no bed, no furniture, only a scorched circle carved into the floor, blackened beyond repair. Candles burned without melting, their flames still and white. At the center of the circle knelt the woman, her head bowed, her burned dress fused to her skin. She looked up. This time, she had eyes. They were red, raw, and endlessly tired. "We dream together now," she said. "That means you're already inside." Anand woke with a gasp. His alarm clock blinked 2:17 a.m. He hadn't set it. From the bathroom mirror, his reflection stared back, unchanged except for one detail. Around his wrists were faint, dark impressions, like marks left by ropes that had once been pulled tight. Anand understood then what terrified him most. The dream was not showing him the room. It was preparing him for it. And somewhere in the hotel, something was learning how to wear his shape. Chapter 10. The Woman Returns. The woman returned on the 14th night. Anand knew it before he saw her. The air in the lobby grew dense, heavy enough to press against his chest. The jasmine scent from the air freshener vanished, replaced by the familiar bitterness of smoke and something metallic underneath, like blood left too long in the heat. The clock behind the desk ticked louder than usual. 2:16 a.m. Anon stood, hands clenched, eyes fixed on the glass doors. They did not open. She simply appeared. The woman stood a few steps from the reception desk, exactly where she had been before. Her white dress was no longer clean. Dark burn marks crept up from the hem. The fabric fused unevenly to her legs. Her hair hung in wet strands, clinging to her face. This time, she did not look down. Anon felt his breath leave him. Her eyes were gone. In their place were two deep, black hollows, rimmed with cracked, reddened skin, as if the fire had hollowed them out from within. Yet he could feel her gaze on him, sharp, unwavering. "You remember now," she said. Her voice no longer whispered. It filled the lobby, vibrating faintly in the glass and metal around them. "I didn't mean to," Anon said, though he wasn't sure what he was apologizing for. "I didn't know." She took a step closer. The floor beneath her bare feet darkened, as if scorched by her touch. "No one ever knows," she replied. "That's why it works." Anon backed away until his spine hit the counter. "What do you want from me?" he asked. She tilted her head, the movement slow and deliberate. "To be finished." The elevator chimed behind her. Soft, polite. The display lit up. 7. Anon shook his head. "I won't open it." The woman's mouth curved into something that might once have been a smile. "You already are." She raised her hand. Anon felt a sudden burning sensation across his palms. The marks from his dreams flared, searing pain shooting up his arms. Images flooded his mind, candles, chanting voices, hands forcing him down, heat blooming out of control. He screamed. When the pain subsided, he looked down. In his hands was a key. Old. Brass. Warm. No number was engraved on it. The woman stepped aside, clearing a path to the elevator. "Tonight," she said calmly, "the door remembers what it was made for." The elevator doors slid open. Inside, there were no buttons. Only a single symbol carved deep into the metal panel, an ancient sigil meant to open what should never answer. Anon realized then that the hotel was no longer waiting for his decision. It had already chosen him. The doors began to close.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The Key Without a Number. The key burned in Anon's palm. Not like metal left under the sun, but like something alive, heat pulsing in slow, deliberate waves, syncing with his heartbeat. Every instinct screamed at him to drop it, yet his fingers curled tighter around the shaft, skin refusing to let go. The elevator doors closed. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Then the elevator began to move. Anon felt it immediately, not the familiar lurch upward, but a sinking sensation, as though the floor beneath him had given up on gravity altogether. The walls creaked softly, metal stretching in protest. There were no floor numbers on the panel. No emergency button. No reflection in the mirrored surface, only a dim, shifting blur where his face should have been. The key grew heavier. Images bled into his thoughts without warning. A woman screaming in a language he did not understand. Hands binding wrists too tightly. Chanting voices overlapping, desperate, greedy. Fire spreading faster than fear. Anon gasped, clutching his chest. "Stop," he whispered, to the key. To the elevator. To the memory pressing against the inside of his skull. The movement slowed. The elevator shuddered once, then stopped. The doors opened. Anon stepped out into a corridor that should not exist. This was not the 7th floor he remembered from the blueprints. The ceiling was lower. The air was hotter. The hallway stretched impossibly far in both directions, lit by flickering bulbs that hummed in uneven rhythm. The carpet was blackened, stiff underfoot, as if burned long ago and never replaced. Behind him, the elevator doors closed silently. There was no button panel to call it back. At the far end of the corridor stood a single door. Room 724. The brass plaque gleamed, unmarred by scratches, freshly polished. The words "Do not open" were gone. In their place was a new inscription, carved deep and clean. "Complete the stay." Anon's hands shook as he raised the key. The moment it neared the lock, the door responded. It exhaled. A long, trembling breath seeped through the crack, carrying the scent of smoke. wax, and something far older, something that had waited years to be acknowledged. The walls around the door throbbed faintly, as if listening. From behind the door came a voice. Not the woman's. Not his own. Plural. We kept it open for you. The key turned on its own. Anand felt the click resonate through his bones. For the first time since taking the night shift, he understood the truth. The key was never meant to open the door. It was meant to make sure it couldn't close again. Chapter 12. The floor that shouldn't exist. The moment Anand stepped through the doorway, the world rearranged itself. The corridor behind him vanished without sound, without warning, folding inward like a breath pulled back into unfamiliar lungs. Where the door to room 724 had been, there was now only a seamless wall, warm beneath his fingertips, faintly pulsing. He was no longer inside the hotel. The floor beneath his feet was tiled, but uneven, sloping slightly downward as though the entire level had begun to sink. The walls were lined with doors, dozens of them, each identical in shape but different in age. Some were freshly painted, others were charred, blistered, their handles warped by heat. None of them had numbers. Above, the ceiling lights flickered erratically, casting shadows that did not match the angles of the bodies that made them. Anand realized, with a tightening in his chest, that some of those shadows moved independently, stretching, recoiling, lingering where nothing stood. The air was thick with murmurs. Not voices, exactly, but impressions, half-formed words. Fragments of regret and longing pressed so densely together that they blurred into a constant, low vibration. It reminded Anand of standing inside a temple during prayer, except here the devotion felt twisted, misdirected. He walked. Each step echoed too loudly, as if the floor wanted to announce his presence. As he passed the doors, images bled into his vision. A man kneeling, hands clasped, begging something unseen for forgiveness. A child crying softly behind a door that would never open again. A woman pressing her face against wood, mouth open in a silent scream as smoke curled around her. They were not ghosts. They were stays. Unfinished arrivals. Interrupted departures. Anand stopped when he noticed something written repeatedly along the walls, scratched deep into plaster. Carved with fingernails, burned into the surface with careful intent. Remember US. The words overlapped, layered upon one another until they became almost unreadable. At the far end of the floor, a familiar figure waited. The woman in white stood beneath a single steady light. Her dress was now completely burned away at the edges, revealing skin marked by dark patterns, symbols etched so deeply they had become part of her. "This is where we wait," she said calmly. "This is what happens when doors are left unfinished." Anand's voice barely worked. "How many of you are there?" She looked past him, down the endless corridor of doors. "As many as it took," she replied, "as many as believed." She stepped closer. For the first time, Anand saw her face clearly, not hollow, not monstrous, but human, exhausted, trapped. "They used us to open something," she said, "but when it went wrong, they sealed the room and pretended we were never here." She reached out, touching his chest lightly. "Now you're here," she whispered, "and the floor remembers how to grow." The lights above surged suddenly, flaring bright. New doors began to appear along the walls, forming where there had been none seconds before. Anand understood the horror of it. The hotel was expanding, and it was hungry.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The Truth Inside Room 724. Room 724 was not a room. That was the first truth Anand understood when the door finally opened all the way. There was no bed, no windows, no furniture of any kind. The space beyond the threshold expanded unnaturally, wider than the hotel itself, its walls curving inward like the inside of a ribcage. The floor was scorched black, carved with a massive circular pattern that dominated the room. Symbols were etched deep into the surface, overlapping layers of ash, blood, and something darker that had soaked too far in to ever be cleaned. Candles lined the circle. They were half melted, frozen mid-drip, their flames burning without flicker or heat. The air shimmered above them, distorted, as if the room were remembering the moment it was born. Anon stepped inside. The door closed behind him. Not with a slam, but with finality. Images flooded the room the moment his foot crossed the circle's edge. He saw them clearly now, men and women dressed in ceremonial white, chanting with voices thick with desperation. He felt their fear disguised as faith, their greed wrapped in prayer. They were not priests. They were businessmen, politicians, people who believed money could buy silence from the universe. And at the center of it all, her. The woman knelt exactly where Anon now stood. Ropes bit into her wrists and ankles. Her mouth was gagged, eyes wide and burning with disbelief rather than terror. She had not understood what they were doing until it was too late. She was never meant to die, a voice said. The woman in white appeared at the edge of the room, her form wavering like heat haze. They needed someone alive when the door opened. She continued, someone to anchor it. The chanting grew louder in Anon's head. The symbols glowed faintly, responding. But they were impatient, she said. They panicked when the fire spread. When the thing on the other side reached back. Anon felt it then. Something vast and formless pressing against the far edge of the circle, testing. Waiting, breathing. The ritual failed, the woman said softly. The gate didn't close. It learned. The candles flared suddenly, white flames stretching upward. Anon staggered, clutching his chest as the room reacted to him, walls pulsing. Symbols rearranging themselves beneath his feet. You were never chosen by chance, she said, stepping closer. The hotel needed someone who could remember. Someone who would stay awake long enough to listen. Anon shook his head. I won't replace you. Her expression softened, not with relief, but with sorrow. No, she said, you won't. The circle beneath Anon ignited. Not with fire, but with recognition. The room whispered his name. And for the first time since 1998, room 724 understood that it was no longer empty. Chapter 14, The Final Door. The circle beneath Anon's feet pulsed once, slow, deliberate, like a heart testing whether it still remembered how to beat. The whispers grew clearer. Not voices anymore, but intentions, wants, hungers layered upon one another, pressing inward from the walls, the floor, the ceiling itself. Room 724 was no longer a place. It was a convergence of unfinished bargains, broken prayers, and doors that had been forced open without knowing what waited beyond them. A new door appeared. It formed directly opposite Anon, rising from the scorched wall as if pulled from within it. Unlike the others, this one was pristine, smooth, unburned, its surface pale and almost luminous. No plaque, no warning. Just a handle. This is the last one, the woman said quietly. She stood beside him now. No longer flickering, no longer incomplete. The burns on her skin had faded into faint shadows. Scars rather than wounds. She looked lighter, as if something had loosened its grip. What's behind it? Anon asked. She did not answer immediately. An ending, she said at last. For me, for them. She gestured toward the murmuring walls. And a beginning for the room. Anon felt the truth of it settle into his bones. The door was not an exit. It was a transfer. If I open it, he said slowly, this place closes? The woman met his eyes. For the first time, he saw gratitude there, and fear. It closes for us, she replied, not for the hotel. The whispers sharpened. The symbols around the circle glowed brighter, rearranging themselves, adapting. The thing beyond the gate stirred, aware now that something was about to change. They will forget me, the woman continued. The fire, the room, even this floor. And me? Anon asked. She hesitated. You will be remembered, she said, but not the way you expect. The handle was warm beneath his fingers. Behind him, the room shifted. The air thickened, pressing against his back like a crowd leaning forward in anticipation. He could feel the hotel above, floors stacked neatly in denial. Guests sleeping peacefully, unaware that a choice was being made beneath their dreams. Anon closed his eyes. He thought of the Guestbook. Of names erased. Of a woman burned so a door could be opened halfway and abandoned. I won't let it keep growing, he said. The woman exhaled, a sound halfway between a sigh and a prayer. Anon pulled the handle. The door opened inward. Beyond it was darkness, not empty, but contained. A vast, waiting silence, disciplined and final. The whispers surged, then screamed, then collapsed into a single, thunderous inhale. The woman stepped forward. As she crossed the threshold, she turned back once. "Thank you," she said, "for finishing what they couldn't." She smiled. Then the door closed. The symbols on the floor burned out at once. The candles extinguished. The room shuddered violently, walls contracting, folding inward as if being packed away. Anon screamed as the light vanished. And the hotel above felt, for the first time in decades, a door lock itself properly.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The room remains closed. Morning came to Sawasdi Orchid Hotel without ceremony. The lobby lights were brighter than usual. The air smelled clean, almost sterile. Guests passed through with rolling suitcases, complaining about traffic, asking about breakfast hours, unaware that anything had ever been wrong. Room 724 no longer appeared on any map. Maintenance records listed it as permanently sealed due to structural instability. A layer of concrete now filled the doorway behind the wall at the end of the 7th floor. No plaque, no warning sign, no scratches on the wood, because there was no wood left. According to the official records, nothing had ever happened there. The night shift logbook told a different story. At 2:17 a.m., a final entry appeared. Not faint. Not half erased. Clear, complete. Room 724. Status: closed. No staff member signed beneath it. Anon did not return home. Security footage from the lobby showed him standing behind the desk at 1:59 a.m., perfectly still. Eyes unfocused. At 2:17 a.m., the footage skipped 17 seconds. When it resumed, the desk was empty. There was no sign of struggle. No emergency call. No missing person report filed. Management explained it as abandonment of duty. The hotel hired a new night receptionist within the week. But some things changed. The elevator no longer flickered at night. The 7th floor stayed the same length. No footsteps echoed after 2 a.m. And yet, guests occasionally complained about knocking. 3 slow knocks, they said, coming from inside the walls. Always the same rhythm, always at the same time. Housekeeping staff reported that the guest book sometimes opened on its own. Always to a blank page. Sometimes, faint letters appeared there in the early morning hours, pressed deep into the paper rather than written in ink. Check-in, 2:17. Stay, ongoing. Old staff whispered that the hotel had finally learned its lesson. It no longer tried to open doors it could not close. It kept one instead. If you stand alone in the lobby late at night and look closely at the mirrored wall behind the reception desk, you might notice something strange. For just a moment, when the lights flicker, you will see 2 figures reflected there. A woman in white, smiling softly. And beside her, a man in a night uniform, watching the hallway, making sure no one goes where they shouldn't. The room remains closed. But it is no longer empty. The hotel still operates today. Guests check in. Lights turn off at night. Nothing appears out of place. But those who work the night shift know better. They know not to answer the knocking. Not to read what appears in the guest book after midnight. And never, under any circumstance, to ask about the room that no longer exists. Because some doors don't want to be opened again. They want to be remembered. And once they are, they remember you too.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.